So when I say Great Flood, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Noah, right? The ark, two of every animal. It's one of the most famous stories on the planet. But what if I told you that whole story, the world-ending flood, the hero, the boat, is actually way, way older than the version you know? All right, so let's get right into it. Where does this story really come from? Well, the answer takes us on a journey way back, almost 4,000 years, to the clay tablets of ancient Mesopotamia. That's modern-day Iraq, by the way. We're about to uncover the original blueprint for the flood myth, a story that, you'll see, has shaped cultures for thousands of years. Yeah, take a look at this timeline. It really lays it all out, doesn't it? The oldest text we have, the Atra-Hasis epic, goes all the way back to the 18th century BC. I mean, that's centuries before the more famous Epic of Gilgamesh even gets its hands on the story, and over 1,000 years before the book of Genesis was put together in the form we know it today. The big takeaway here? This story had a long, rich life of its own, long before it ever became the tale of Noah. So let's get to it. Let's meet the original hero of this story. His tale is told in an ancient Akkadian epic that's actually named after him, Atra-Hasis. So the name Atra-Hasis, it literally means exceedingly wise. And that tells you a lot about the guy right from the start. He's not just some random dude who builds a boat. He's a pious priest, and he's got a direct line to one of the gods, and his story, which was written in Akkadian, the language of ancient Mesopotamia, is so much bigger than just a flood. It's a full-on creation myth that explains the very reason humanity even exists. You see, the story doesn't even start with humans. It starts with the gods. And boy, did they have a problem. We're talking about a serious labor dispute that was about to tear their entire world apart. Okay, so you've got to understand the divine hierarchy here. Think of it like a company. You had the Anunnaki, who were the senior management, the ruling gods, led by the big boss Enlil. And then you had the Igigi. They were the junior gods, the ones doing all the backbreaking work, like literally digging the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And they weren't just doing this for a couple of years. The epic tells us they were toiling away for 40 years. Can you imagine? 40 years of that strenuous labor, until finally they just snapped. They'd had enough. It was time to go on strike. And this wasn't some quiet protest either. It was dramatic. They surrounded the home of the chief god Enlil in the middle of the night and literally burned their tools. Enlil, completely shocked and honestly a little scared, calls this emergency meeting. And the solution they cook up? It's pretty radical. They decide to create a whole new class of beings just to do the work for them. Yep, they decided to make humans. So what's the recipe for a human according to this epic? Well, you take some clay, you mix it with the blood and flesh of a slain god, specifically a god who had intelligence, and you've got your new workers. This little detail is so brilliant because it spells out their purpose so clearly. Humans weren't created out of love or for some grand cosmic purpose. Nope, we were created to be a permanent biological workforce for the gods. Period. But as you can probably guess, this perfect solution didn't stay perfect for very long. The gods solved their labor problem, but in the process they created a brand new one, a population problem. Fast forward 1,200 years. Humans, well, they did what we do best. They multiplied. A lot. The earth got crowded, and the epic describes the noise of humanity as being so deafeningly loud that it kept the gods, especially our guy Enlil, from getting any sleep. His new workforce had become a massive, unbearable headache. So Enlil, getting more and more frustrated, tries a few things to solve his noise problem. First up, he sends a plague. That doesn't work. Then a drought. Nope. Then another, even worse famine. Still no good. See, each time, this other clever god, Enki, who'd helped create humanity in the first place, secretly tells his favorite priest, our man Atra-Hasis, how to survive. So Enlil, completely fed up, decides on a final solution: a total wipeout. A great flood to destroy them all. Now here's the catch. All the gods, Enki included, were sworn to secrecy about the flood. But Enki finds this brilliant loophole. He goes to Atra-Hasis' hut, which is made of reeds, and he speaks to the wall, knowing full well his priest is inside listening. He gives these cryptic instructions: separate yourself from your house, build a ship, spurn your possessions, save your life. Basically, build a boat, forget your stuff, and save yourself. And that is exactly what Atra-Hasis does. Okay, but the story doesn't end there. The tale of Atra-Hasis and the flood was just too powerful to fade away. Hundreds of years later, it gets a new life when it's adapted and woven into an even more famous story, the Epic of Gilgamesh.
So in this epic, the hero Gilgamesh is terrified of dying. He goes on this huge quest to find the secret to immortality, and he seeks out the one man who was ever granted eternal life, the survivor of the Great Flood. The story of Atra-Hasis is pretty much lifted and dropped right into Gilgamesh's journey. But it's not just a copy and paste job. There are some really important changes that show us how these ancient cultures started to see their gods differently.
All right, if we look at a side-by-side comparison, some really interesting changes pop out. The hero's name, for one, is now Utnapishtim, not Atra-Hasis. The original reason for the flood, all those noisy humans, is kind of downplayed. But the biggest, most telling difference is how the gods themselves are portrayed. In the original Atra-Hasis story, the gods are suffering right alongside everyone else. They're literally starving and thirsty because their human slaves aren't there to feed them anymore.
But the Gilgamesh version, it edits that part out. Instead of the gods suffering cramps from hunger, the text just says they feared the deluge. It's a subtle change, but it's a really important one. It makes the gods seem less flawed, less dependent on humans, and way more powerful. It's almost like a divine PR move.
So why should we care about all this? Well, it matters because tracking this story's journey helps us see how ideas and myths travel across cultures and through time. This 4,000-year-old story didn't just stop with Gilgamesh. It's narrative DNA, its very structure, spread all across the ancient world. I mean, the parallels with the story of Noah's Ark are just impossible to ignore, right? You've got a divine plan to destroy humanity, a chosen hero who gets a warning to build a boat, the survival of his family and the animals, and even a sacrifice made after the waters go down. And it's not just the Hebrew Bible. Even Greek epics like the Iliad and the Odyssey show influence from these Mesopotamian stories, from their councils of the gods to their heroic journeys.
So, what's the big takeaway here? It's that this core narrative, divine frustration, a warning to a worthy hero, salvation on an ark, and the survival of humanity, this became a cornerstone of mythology. It's one of the most powerful and enduring story structures in all of human history, passed down and adapted for thousands and thousands of years.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The story of the Great Flood isn't just one story. It's a whole lineage of stories, evolving and changing over time. And it makes you ask a bigger question. How many of our other fundamental stories, the ones we think we know inside and out, actually started nearly 4,000 years ago, written on a clay tablet?